What's up, everyone? Howard Kingston here, entrepreneur, marketer, and co-founder of Growth Velocity Academy. In this episode, how to make sure you hire an incredible agency for your startup. Or another way of putting it, how to make sure you avoid a really costly agency hiring mistake. So just got off a call earlier today from a coaching client who is a startup founder, really smart dude. He's in an accelerator as well, and they're just about to close an investment round. And one of the things he said, which is something I hear very, very often, so I'm really excited to be talking about this episode, is he's just launching his product. He's just about now to start scaling, and he's going to outsource his marketing to an agency who's going to hire, mainly because he doesn't understand how to do it himself. All right. So I want to talk a little bit about that. If you are if you're in the midst of launching a business and you're thinking of hiring an agency, this episode is going to be huge for you. And trust me, it's going to save you tons of money and tons of time. So I'm going to talk about 3 top tips to hiring an agency the right way and avoiding key mistakes when you're thinking of hiring an agency for your startup. All right. So tip number 1 is outsourcing your success too early. Okay. So guys, big red flag here. Okay. Let me go back to that example I talked about before that, I was on this call with this founder earlier today, and he's like, okay, I'm going to hire this agency to do my marketing once I close this investment round. And it kind of like how it came about. I was like, by the way, who's going to do the marketing for you to hit this thousands of customers that you want to get? He's like, I'm just going to hire an agency. I was like, okay, is there anyone in-house that knows how to do any of your marketing? He's like, nah, I'm just going to outsource it. Now that is a red flag to me, right? Because the way startups are different than a traditional business. Okay, so let's just say you have a very established business, and that, like, let's say Instagram advertising is really effective for your business. Then agencies are really good for that, because you kind of go, okay, Instagram advertising, I know that works. So I'm now going to go and I'm going to hire the best Instagram agencies I can to execute on that. And I kind of know what I can expect is good and bad. Now, that's very different if you're an established business versus a startup. You literally don't even know what marketing channels will work. You probably have a guess. You could kind of like hypothesize, but you don't know. And you're going to hire an agency that you don't even know which type of agency to hire, because you don't know which marketing channel is going to be the most effective. So what happens there is then you try and hire an agency which is not world class at one thing, which is kind of like a bit of a generalist. Okay. And agencies are not built to experiment and rapidly experiment and try and figure out which channels work. And by the way, their salesperson might say they are, but they're not. And a big thing you need to remember when you're an early stage entrepreneur, guys, is that literally the thing that's going to either make you or break you is your ability to get customers. One of my favorite quotes in marketing is from Gabriel Weinberg, the founder of a business called DuckDuckGo and author of a book called Traction. And he famously said that almost every failed business has a product. But what almost every failed business does not have is enough customers. And what he's really saying there is that, like, times have changed. It used to be that, building a product or an app or a website or a SaaS business or whatever was the hard bit. And, that was the hard thing, and not many people were able to do that. Well, guys, in today's world, it's so easy to get an app built or a website built. Now the key thing is, can you build something people want and you can get customers for? And in those early stages, your ability to acquire customers is going to become a core competency for you. Like it's something that's so important. How could you outsource it? Because if you outsource it, that other business is not going to care about your customers and your ability, your success as much as you do. So that is a massive red flag and massive thing I would really check in on. Why are you outsourcing so early? Is it because truly this agency is the best for you? Or is it because you thinking of learning how to acquire customers yourself is either too scary or too hard? And the reality is, guys, when you're launching a company, I just don't want to sugarcoat this. You're going to have to do the hard things. You're going to have to do the scary things. And your comfort zone is probably building the product and being the visionary. But you know what? Outsourcing your user acquisition, particularly in too early in the early stages, is hugely risky. The chances of that agency being able to deliver what you need at the very, very beginning is very low in my experience. Agencies, the right time to hire an agency is when you've already tested some channels and you know for pretty certain that there's this one channel that is like, almost certain to work. Now it's just about executing on it, and it's about doing it the most efficiently. That's what agencies are great for, doing one thing very, very well. Or for example, if you know your industry space really well and you know definitely that there's this one channel that's going to be the most effective, then sure, get the best in breed agency that do that one channel and get them to execute that. That's fine. But if you're very much in experimental mode and you're trying to figure stuff out, hiring an agency too early is one of the big mistakes I'd say to avoid. Tip number 2 is agree your KPIs. Okay, so agree your KPIs, but don't buy without your KPIs. Okay. Now, what I see is people are looking to hire an agency. Maybe it's for PR, maybe it's for ads, maybe it's for social, whatever. And of course, people will come in and there'll be all these agencies pitching you their business. They're going to tell you what they're going to do. They're going to tell you the activity they're going to do. They're going to show you some great graphics. There might be some amazing video that they show you, but that's all good. That's the input. What you want to do is agree the outputs before you begin and before you sign on the dotted line of the contract with them. Because it's when they're pitching to you and you're in the kind of sell stage, when they're trying to get your business, that's when you have the most leverage. And you want to make sure, do not agree a contract with an agency until you agree some KPIs with them. Now, what do I mean by a KPI? Key performance indicator. Something like, for example, for a PR piece, you want to agree exactly, for a PR agency, agree exactly how many pieces in the press you're going to get from certain type of publications. Okay? Absolutely, you have to agree that stuff. Like in numbers now, guys, not like lots or we will make our best efforts. No, you want to agree exactly. Let's say, for example, you agree per month you want to have 5 pieces in trade press, 5 pieces in national press, and 5 pieces in the tech press. Let's just say, for example, I'm just making that off the top of my head. But that would be an example of very clear KPIs. And at the end of every month, you can see that the person deliver on that. Equally, when it comes to, say, advertising, you want to have exactly the same. For your Facebook ads, they need to be hitting certain costs per lead metrics, ROAS metrics, return on ad spend metrics. You want to have this stuff all agreed in advance before they start. Okay. And a little bit of a ninja tip, as well as the KPIs, get them to agree who is going to be working on your account. Okay. During when you do actually sign up, because guess what? In the pitch meeting, chances are you've got the MD or you've got the founder who's doing all this, super slick and inspiring pitch. But then you don't see them again, because then they roll out the junior account manager who's only been working in the business for 6 months since their first job to manage your account. And the reality is that's the person that you're going to be speaking to, the junior person on a day-to-day basis. So again, when you're signing up before you're signing the contract, you have the most leverage. So make sure during that conversation that's when you say, hold on, like, can I ask who will be my point person for this agency relationship? And at that point they'll probably tell you, they'll have to disclose to you who will be the point person. And a really great line I like to use is, let's say you're just about to agree with someone. You say, listen, I'm in between you and this other agency who is all very competitive. The thing that would really seal the deal for me is if you, the founder or MD or whoever it is, if you are the point person, the main person, go-to person on my account, and I have direct access to you, don't mind if you're supported by the account exec, no problem. But as long as you're the point person that I have direct contact with you, then I'll sign with you guys. And every time I've done that, they've always gone, yeah, okay, no problem. And then I have that direct access to the best person in their organization. Because here's the thing, most agencies, like the founder and the MD is amazing, but they then hire in very junior talent, and they're obviously less experienced, and that's where some of the mistakes happen. Okay, and then tip number 3 is manage effectively internally. Okay, manage effectively internally. Now, what does that mean? So the second tip I was just telling you is about kind of like making the right agreements, but now this is on you. This last tip is about you managing you taking ownership of how you are managing this internally in your team. So a couple of things I would really recommend here. One is you need to have one point person who is responsible for the relationship in your team. Like, not, what's the saying? If no one owns something, no one is responsible for something. Okay. And I know that Steve Jobs, I remember hearing once that Steve Jobs in Apple would always have one person who's ultimately responsible for a project, whether it be the iPhone, whether it be the iPad, whatever. Like, a huge organization like Apple, but there'd be someone who's responsible for it, because that gives a huge sense of ownership of the outcome. You need to have the same in your company, because otherwise what will happen is the agency will be sending through reports and sending through updates, and everyone thinks, it's not my job, someone else will look at it, and no one is really making sure they get the full they really leverage the agency to the full amount and get the most out of them. Now, trust me on this, guys. Trust me. You might hear this and go, oh, I'll be different. It'll be grand. We'll do that differently. Trust me. This is not in the first week or two. Fast forward 2 or 3 months, and you just stop doing the full attention to detail of the reports that are coming through, because it's not your full responsibility. You're sharing responsibility. You're hoping someone else is doing it. 2 or 3 months in, and next thing, the agency can see that you're not quite on top of them, and they start taking their foot off the gas, and that's how things spiral. I've seen it too many times. So appoint somebody as your point person in your company to be responsible for getting the most out of that agency relationship. Okay. And then the second thing is, when it comes to your internal team, is making sure that you have a weekly rhythm of communicating and speaking to your agency. None of this email updates every week or two, or once a month catch up. No, you need to have a once weekly call. I don't mind if it's Zoom, don't mind if it's on person, but this is where they digest and download to you what they've been doing, what's worked, and then what's not worked, what they've learned, and what they're going to try next. Because this is where you can really iterate and really kind of learn from the agency. Because remember, the first point is, the big risk with an agency is all this learning about your marketing and your target market, you're outsourcing. So you want to make sure you're really on top of what they're doing, you're challenging them, you're keeping them in line, but also you're bringing that learning in every single week. Okay. So guys, in this episode, what we've been talking about is how, if you're going to hire an agency, what's the best way to do, and what's the best way to get the most out of it. And tip number 1 is, don't outsource it too early. That's probably the biggest mistake I see people make. They don't want to deal with marketing, so they just outsource it. And guess what? If it doesn't work out, guys, you got to take responsibility for that yourself. You can't just point the finger at the agency, all right? Tip number 2 is don't buy before you have a KPI. Don't buy before the KPIs, okay? Get those locked, get them in the contract, get numbers associated with them. If the agency is kind of like squirming on that, say this is non-negotiable, the KPI has to be in the contract. Trust me on this, guys. Tip number 3 is then manage the rhythm internally, both with a weekly rhythm of meetings as well as making sure you have a point person responsible. Okay, so guys, hopefully this has been useful. If you know anybody, a friend who is thinking of hiring an agency or going through this kind of process, please do share this message with them. Share this episode with them, and please do hit subscribe. The more you hit subscribe and leave comments, the more people will hear this message and will be able to impact more people. Okay, guys, look forward to seeing you in the next episode, and thanks so much. Peace out.